You know you've got a comeback in you. When you take the next step, you're going to make it count. For your career, for your family, for your life. You can earn a degree you're proud of with Purdue Global. Purdue Global is backed by Purdue University, one of the nation's most respected and innovative public universities. This is your chance. This is your opportunity. This is your comeback. Purdue Global, Purdue's online university for working adults. Start your comeback today at purdueglobal.edu.
She's seen Encanto more times than she can count. And she can count to 10. She mentioned Mirabel in every conversation. But the moment she actually met Mirabel, she was speechless. That's pura magia. Find yours at Walt Disney World Resort.
5 years, 10 months, and 2 days. That's how long it took to grow the 38 inches to ride on Cali River Rapids. But the moment the wait finally ended, that was pura magia. Discover it at Walt Disney World Resort.
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Yates. I'm a producer at Wonder Media Network, and I'm so excited to be guest hosting this episode of Womanica. This month, we're diving into the divas of history, examining how the label has been used from many angles, whether describing women pejoratively or with admiration. The New York Times dubbed her the most talked about talkative woman in Washington. The wife of a high-ranking Nixon administration official, she traded gossip in swanky rooms all over America's capital, until her big mouth landed her in hot water with the wrong man, the President of the United States. Let's talk about Martha Mitchell. Martha was born on September 2nd, 1918 in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Her father was a successful cotton broker, and her mother was a dictation coach. People who knew Martha during her formative years agreed on one thing. She sure could talk. One high school classmate later said she always had something to say. After graduating college, she briefly worked as a school teacher, though she quickly learned she didn't care for it. In 1945, she moved back home to work as a secretary for the Pine Bluff Arsenal. Shortly thereafter, her boss transferred her to Washington, D.C. There, she met Army officer Clyde Jennings. They married, moved to New York, and had a son before divorcing in 1957. Martha stayed in New York, where she met her second husband, John Mitchell, a wealthy and well-connected lawyer. The couple moved to an affluent suburb and had a daughter. The Mitchells first created ties with Richard Nixon when his law firm merged with John's. The two men became close friends, and Nixon later appointed John chair of his 1968 presidential campaign. After winning the White House, President Nixon made John his attorney general, and the Mitchells moved to the capital city to take up residence in a cushy apartment at the Watergate Hotel. It quickly became clear among Washington movers and shakers that Martha Mitchell was not like other political wives. She was the life of every glitzy party the couple attended, cackling and knocking back cocktails in her beehive hairdo and glittering dresses. She was also hot-headed, willing to throw her weight around to advance her husband's agenda. When Nixon was trying to get a controversial Supreme Court nominee approved, Martha made a string of vile and nasty phone calls to wives of various senators, berating them to fall in line behind the president. She promised that if their husbands didn't vote yes, she'd be on national television campaigning against their re-election. It was not an empty threat. Martha was quite popular with the press, partly because she was willing to dish out Washington's gossip to reporters. She was known for making long, sometimes drunken phone calls late at night to rail against anyone she considered an enemy. And Martha had opinions on everything. She criticized civil rights marches. She called Vietnam War protesters, quote, communists. She refused to curtsy in front of the Queen of England, declaring, quote, an American citizen should not bow to foreign monarchs.
Because since I have been down south, I have found out the American
Martha's television appearances and larger-than-life persona made her into a political star on the right. She was the second most sought-after Republican speaker at events, after only the president himself. She received hundreds of letters from the public. The Washington Press nicknamed her the Mouth of the South. Martha stayed up to date on state secrets by eavesdropping on her husband's private conversations and snooping through his papers. But despite her nosiness and loose lips, neither her husband nor Nixon seemed concerned. John insisted, quote, what else can I do but let her speak? She has no inclination to be quiet. She's not politically motivated. She's just saying what she feels. Nixon felt as long as Martha was targeting his liberal enemies, she could, quote, give them hell. But those glib attitudes towards Martha's big mouth wouldn't last. In 1972, John resigned as Attorney General so he could take over Nixon's re-election campaign. Unbeknownst to all but a trusted few, John would not be running a clean campaign. He oversaw an enormous slush fund that went towards all manner of illicit activities, including a planned break-in of the Democratic National Committee's headquarters at the Watergate Hotel. John knew that if Martha found out about any of it, it wouldn't stay a secret for long. So he took great pains to hide the planned break-in from his wife. The night of the break-in, the couple was away in California attending fundraisers. When the burglars were arrested, John needed to rush back to Washington. He instructed FBI agent Steve King to stay with Martha and make sure she didn't see any news about Watergate. Her ignorance was short-lived. The following Monday, Martha saw the headline on the front page of the newspaper and immediately sensed something was fishy. She called a reporter from her California hotel room, griping that she'd given her husband an ultimatum, that she'd leave if he didn't quit the dirty business of politics. Then suddenly, the reporter heard Martha cry, quote, "You just get away, get away." The line went dead. When the journalist called back, the operator said that Martha was indisposed. When the concerned reporter reached out to John for an explanation, he waved the whole thing away, saying, quote, "That little sweetheart, she gets a little upset about politics." Martha wasn't seen in the public for several days. When she reappeared at a country club in New York, there were visible bruises on her arm. She told a reporter, quote, "I'm black and blue. They don't want me to talk." Martha claimed King had locked her in a hotel room and physically restrained her when she tried to escape. Eventually, she was pinned to the hotel bed and sedated by force and held for several days. Nobody believed her. The few outlets that ran the story kept it far from the front page. Nixon's allies discredited Martha's account, calling her a drunk who had experienced a, quote, nervous breakdown. John stepped down from Nixon's re-election campaign and moved the family back to Manhattan, but they couldn't escape the growing Watergate scandal. At first, Martha fiercely defended John, claiming he was totally innocent and being set up by the conniving Nixon. But after Martha learned the full extent of her husband's involvement in the break-in, she turned on him. Their marriage fell apart, and the couple separated in 1973. Martha's biographer later said that after John left, taking their teenage daughter and domestic staff with him, Martha used various kitchen supplies to scrub John's face off his portrait. Martha had gone from a political darling to an impoverished social pariah. She was somewhat vindicated by Nixon's resignation from the presidency in 1974, and former CIA officer and Watergate burglar John McCord eventually admitted to the press that the Nixon administration had indeed kidnapped Martha to keep her quiet. But by then, Martha's health was declining. She died of a rare bone marrow cancer on May 31st, 1976. She was 57 years old.
What can I tell you what?
About Watergate.
I can tell you it leaks. That's it.
At her funeral in Pine Bluff, an anonymous supporter sent her a floral arrangement that spelled out the message, "Martha was right." Her experience inspired psychologists to coin the Martha Mitchell effect to describe the phenomenon of a patient's truthful account of bizarre events being dismissed as mere delusion. All month, we're talking about Divas. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Thanks to co-creators Jenny and Liz Kaplan for letting me sit in. As always, we're taking a break for the weekend. Talk to you on Monday.
Jon Stewart is back in the host chair at The Daily Show, which means he's also back in our ears on The Daily Show Ears Edition podcast. Join late-night legend Jon Stewart and the best news team for today's biggest headlines, exclusive extended interviews, and more. Now this is a second term we can all get behind. Listen to The Daily Show Ears Edition on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Nicola Coughlin, and for BBC Radio 4, this is history's youngest heroes. Rebellion, risk, and the radical power of youth.
She thought, right, I'll just do it. She thought about others rather than herself.
12 stories of extraordinary young people from across history.
There's a real sense of urgency in them, that resistance has to be mounted, it has to be mounted now.
Follow History's Youngest Heroes wherever you get your podcasts.